anyone on mute.
Yismor David, Adonai Rom lo echsar. Pinot Sheyar Bitsin Yamem Luchot Yanachai, Nafshi Yishovei, Yanacheni Lomagret Tzadek Lama'an Shemo, Kam Kirevei Chubiyetz Almaretz, Lo Yira'arai Ki Atah Imadi, Shiftecha Mishantecha Hemayim Nachamoni, Ta'aroch Lefanai Shulchan Sorirai, Tishanta Roshanan Roshi, Kosiri Baya, October Chesed Yedifuni, Koyam Mechayai, Vishaviti, Vivit Adonai, Leorech Yamim. Friends, I've chanted for you the words of our 23rd Psalm. In these moments, mixed with grief and shock, we often turn to the psalmist in search of strength and comfort. And so I invite you to recite these words with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember him. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember him. In the opening buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember him. In the blueness of sky and in the warmth of summer, we will remember him. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember him. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember him. When we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember him. So long as we live, he too will live, for he is now a part of us as we remember Stephan Schwartz. To you, Pat, and to Alesha, and to his brother Joel, who is watching us through technology, to all the members of the family, and to so many dear and cherished friends, those of you who are here with us in person, those of you who, because of the situation of the world, are not able to join us in person, but join your hearts with everyone here today. We welcome you to this moment, to this service where we will not only remember, but also celebrate the life of your beloved Steve. Our sages in their wisdom have taught us that birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, from childhood to maturity and from youth to age, from innocence to awareness, and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Steve's journey began on January 17, 1947. He was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Frida and Leonard Schwartz. And Steve, along with his younger brother Joel, grew up in several of the Pittsburgh neighborhoods. Following Steve's graduation from high school, he matriculated to Michigan State University. And in speaking with you, Pat, you really feel that it was here, or rather there, at Michigan State. The two of you didn't know each other yet, but based on stories Steve has told you throughout the years, it seems that it was there at Michigan State, on campus, where Steve really began to blossom, began to come into his own. While at Michigan State, he majored in social psychology, and he graduated Phi Beta Kappa. His studies continued as he journeyed on to Illinois State University, a school known for its highly respected social psychology program. Steve so enjoyed learning. He was a life learner. He took his studies very seriously, and after earning his master's degree in psychology, he returned to Pittsburgh and began working with troubled adolescents. Steve's next significant move along the journey was one which brought him to Cleveland, Ohio. Initially, he worked at Belfair, continuing to help teens. But his path guided him towards his working within the adult developmental disabled community. Steve's life's work would grow into guiding and helping adults who were within our disability system. It was here that Steve would meet someone, a coworker, who would change his life very much for the better. And of course, this is you, Pat. That Steve was your boss. He shared with me that the first couple years, you were friendly. It was a wonderful working relationship. And over those years, you also became quite impressed with Steve. You and so many others were impressed with his work ethic, his hard work, and how clear it was to see that he loved his work. You saw, as did others, that he loved what he was doing. And through his dedication to the work, he was able to help so many. We know if it wasn't for COVID, we know that hundreds of people would be gathered here today. People he worked with, people he helped, people who he counted as family and friends. And Pat, you saw firsthand that coworkers and colleagues understood that Steve was simply a really good person, what we would call in Yiddish, a mensch. He was a mensch, and because of this, he earned everyone's respect by the way he did things, by the way he approached things. And over time, Pat, you were able to see what he was capable of doing. Somewhere after that second or third year that you had worked together, there was a moment. It might be hard to know what that specific moment was, but Pat, there was this moment when you felt a spark. It was an instant when you realized that your feelings for Steve Schwartz had shifted. And so you asked him to join you on a picnic. And so it began. A friendship grew into a caring partnership. And Steve, a man who always pushed himself to do the right thing, he knew that this new relationship could not work with him remaining as your boss. And so, Pat, you were the one who went looking and found a new job for yourself. And this move, your career move, paved the way for true love to blossom. In the midst of your courtship, the 3 years of dating, Steve decided to go for yet another goal. and he obtained his doctorate. He attended classes at Kent State University and earned his PhD in clinical psychology, all the while continuing to work full-time. Pat, you and your beloved Steve married in July of 1982. As husband and wife, for 38 years, the two of you traveled life's road together. There were the challenges and the celebrations. Of course, there had to have been more trying moments and ultimately great successes. And your travels through life took you across the globe. Together you journeyed throughout Europe, visiting the Mediterranean as well, including Israel. And you went to the Caribbean. There was the amazing riverboat cruise that took you from Paris to Prague. All of these travels and so many more, creating wonderful experiences and the most beautiful memories. And for you and Steve, the two of you were avid readers. It didn't have to be a fancy trip on a cruise ship. You found joy and satisfaction in making an outing in simply going to the bookstore and perusing the aisles and the varied shelves, and then selecting and choosing which books would become part of your large collection. And Pat, when it came to reading, you mentioned that Steve's passion was really found in the area of history. Had it not been psychology, this would have been the area he would have pursued. The two of you also enjoyed the outdoors and nature, hiking through our state parks and riding your bicycles. These moments were so enjoyable. You even engaged in a bicycle tour in Vermont to experience what was billed or advertised as, and I'll put it in quotes, beautiful rolling hills. It didn't take you and Steve long to learn that the rolling hills were more like mountains. It had to have been an exhausting bike tour, but still a wonderful adventure. Your husband was also interested in photography. The beauty that photography is capable of capturing, yes, this did interest him. However, Steve, with that very fascinating and wondrous mind of his, he found what really grabbed his attention, what he especially loved about photography, were all the technical aspects, the settings, the lighting, the depth of field. He found these details fascinating. Throughout his career, he was a member of the American Psychological Association, the Ohio Psychological Association, and the Dual Diagnosis Association. And as a professional, he was called upon numerous times to speak at national and international gatherings. In addition to his full-time work, he was also called upon by various nursing homes within the Cleveland area, as well as the JFSA. And there were the many occasions when, in order to help someone out who was in great need, and what I mean by this is in order to help out a client or a patient who could not afford to pay anyone for their help, Steve would reach out and help. He did this from his heart. It was his way of performing what the Jewish concept of tikkun olam is. Tikkun olam means literally repairing the universe, repairing the world. Not one of us here is expected to live our life and leave this earth having completely repaired this earth, nor are we allowed to leave this earth without making it a better place. Steve did that. He helped many and made this earth a much better place and helped in repairing our broken world. And with all the serious issues that surrounded Steve's career, some might be surprised to learn that he had a very sharp sense of humor. It's true that not everyone got to catch this sense of humor, but he was funny. He had a quick wit, and his sarcasm, while never mean, his sarcasm was always spot on. In speaking with you on the phone yesterday, Pat, the most important thing I learned about Steve Schwartz, a man who I did not have the privilege of knowing, the most important thing I learned, I found in the words you used to describe his character. You said that he was kind and compassionate and it was important to him to do the right thing. You also said that his decisions were never based on what would benefit him, but what was really the right thing to do. I know, Pat, that you were his greatest supporter, his biggest cheerleader, but you shared with me that that's exactly what he was for you. A true partnership built on love and friendship and respect. And so, friends, we take a moment, we join our hearts, whether here in person or here through technology. Together, we join our hearts in recalling the life of Steve Schwartz and of all the good deeds that he performed here in the land of the living. And to this we can say, Amen. We're taught that words which come from the heart enter directly to the heart. There are 3 people I'd like to call on today. 2 of them are here in person. But first I'd like to call on his brother Joel, truly the person who has now known him the longest. Joel and friends, if you'll bear with us for a moment, we would like to see first if we can hear Joel through Zoom. Otherwise, we will be calling him and holding the phone up to the microphone. Please give us just one moment. Joel, can you hear me? Joel, we're going to call you. Can somebody call Joel? Does he have your number? Joel, if you're able to call Pat's phone, could you please do so? I know you gave me his number. Joel, I'm hoping you can hear me. I'm uncertain if you can.
Okay. Now.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, is that Joel by chance?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, Joel. All right, we saw Joel.
Can you,
Joel, if you're able, please call Pat's phone.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Joel,
okay,
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Wave
but
your hand if you can hear me, Joel. Fantastic. All right, Joel, can you call Pat's telephone?
We're going to try, but we got both phones tied up here right now. You can't hear me.
Let me say it into the microphone.
Can you hear me through here?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Joel, we know you can hear us. Are you able to call, if you're able to call Pat's cell phone, could you please wave your hand?
Have him talk now.
Just
Try speaking now, Joel. Let's see if we can hear you.
You can't hear me there?
Yes. We can hear you.
All right.
Tell you what.
Go.
You tell me when. Yeah.
Did Joel call?
No, Dad, they can hear you. Go ahead.
All right, Joel, we're
Okay.
going to give you Pat's phone number.
No.
Joel,
Wait.
if you have a moment, type this phone number in. 440 241
Let him just talk now.
3347.
I don't understand why they can't hear you.
Yeah,
They
I don't
can-
understand.
We can
why-
hear. Just go. We can hear you.
Okay.
Just go, Joel.
All right. Well,
Is someone with Joel?
I don't know if they can hear me.
Yes.
No, that's
Okay.
another person on Zoom.
All right. Well,
Now, let me see Joel for 1 second.
all right.
Okay, Joel, you
Simply
can't see
state-
me right now, but I can see you. Please wave your hand, Joel, if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Beautiful. Joel, please wave your hand if you have your cell phone with you.
That's what I'm doing.
We can't hear you, Joel. Do you have your cell phone with you? Yes? Okay. Joel, could you take your cell phone and dial this phone number I'm going to give you?
I'll do it from here. You stay on.
Okay. Sherry's gonna do it on her phone.
It's even, can you write down this phone number, Joel, and then you can get off your cell phone and you can call us from the cell phone?
She's ready to dial. Did you put the number in?
Somebody's got to give me the number.
She
Or
gave
is
it.
someone with you, Joel, who has another cell phone? You can stay on your phone and they can
Yeah.
call?
Yeah, we're
All right,
trying.
when you're ready for the phone number, Joel, just give me your thumbs up.
Give me the phone number.
We need the phone number again.
So Joel, we're having an issue here where we cannot hear you.
It seems like the sound problem is
Is
on
the
your,
volume up here?
not the Zoom end.
One moment, friends.
Yeah.
Could somebody from the Zoom say something to us, please?
It sounds like the problem is via your computer speakers because multiple.
Okay, I can hear
Put 'em
I
on
can hear
mute.
your voice. There's a nice young lady speaking wearing
Okay.
headphones and glasses.
Yes.
It's very faint though. Is that as loud as it goes?
Yes, I'm Joel's granddaughter. We can hear his Zoom. He's on Zoom as Sherry Schwartz.
So sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, so we're not on mute. Can someone assist Joel in calling Pat's phone so that we can put Pat's phone on speakerphone?
Saying we can hear him.
Everybody else can hear him on Zoom. Unfortunately, you might not be able to hear him outside.
Could you dial them?
I'm not sure.
Just
Don't know what the number is.
Give us the
Joel,
number and
are
I'll
you
give
able
it
to
to
hear
my
me?
parents. Go ahead.
Okay. Matt, are you with your dad? No, your dad's in Florida. Okay.
Right, but just give.
Tell
if
you what we're gonna
the
do.
number, I'll give it to
Matt,
them.
we can't hear you. I'm so sorry. But if you can get your father to call Pat's phone, I'm gonna give you the number, Matt. Write this down. It's 440
241
241
3347.
3347. We're gonna wait one more minute, and if it doesn't work now, we're gonna have the other two speakers speak, and then we'll come back to your father. Okay, so, all right, so answer that phone. Okay, great. It's Joel. Okay, fantastic. Answer it. Okay, how do you answer your phone? I need you to answer it. Well, did you swipe up?
I don't know. It's an Android.
All right,
Yep.
Joel, is this you?
Yes, it is.
Amen. Okay, I'm gonna try and put you on, hang on, Joel, I'm gonna try and put you, thank you for your patience, Aaron. We're gonna try and put you on speakerphone. Hold on.
Okay.
Joel, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right.
Can you hear me?
And where's your volume, on this side? Is that it? Hold on, Joel. Okay, Joel?
Yes.
All right, we're gonna have you go ahead and speak now. We can hear you.
I have to take this away.
Okay, Joel, go ahead.
Stated, my brother Steve was a great guy. In early childhood, he demonstrated character traits that continued throughout his lifetime. He was brave, he was fearless, and he was unassuming. I'll give you an example. When Steve was 7 and I was 5, our family went with another family from our synagogue to a public swimming pool. The other family had 2 sons. One was 7 and one was 3. The 3-year-old was an absolute hellion. He could get into trouble faster than anybody you've ever known. He decided to jump into the swimming pool, even though he had no idea of how to swim. Even though the pool was relatively crowded and had lifeguards, nobody noticed this 3-year-old flailing helplessly in the pool. He wasn't screaming, he wasn't making any noise. He was just going to go down for the count. Steve noticed him. He jumped in and saved his life. Once they pulled him out of the pool, Steve never said a word about it. If it had been me, I would have gone back to 11th Avenue on New Brighton and run up and down the street telling everybody what a hero I was. Steve didn't say a word. And that was Steve. Our family moved on from New Brighton to Jefferson in 1957, where Steve and I both attended Thomas Jefferson High School. Steve decided in 11th grade he would be a football player. And joined the team. And even though he never had a snowball chance in Hades of ever having one snap in a varsity game, he showed up religiously for practice and acted as cannon fodder for the starters. He came home every night, bruised and battered, but he never complained. And he probably would have gone back to play in his senior year if teenage hormones, common sense, and my dad's nudging with the offer to buy him an automobile hadn't changed his mind. He did not play in his senior year. Steve was not much of a student in high school, not that he couldn't have been, he just didn't really care. He was acutely interested in current events and avidly read every issue of Newsweek, Time, and Life magazine that came to my dad's drugstore. Once Steve left Thomas Jefferson and went to Michigan State, he became much more into studying. He became a 4.0 student and was elected to Phi Beta Kappa. I'm sorry that some of this is a reiteration of what you already heard, so I'll try to speed through things for you. After leaving Michigan State, he went to University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, and received his master's, and then began his work career in Pittsburgh in juvenile corrections. Leaving Pittsburgh, he went to Cleveland, and you heard his work history. But most importantly, he met Pat, the love of his life, and Lisa. They had many happy years together. Steve, in addition to his main job, had numerous part-time jobs, both because, as aforementioned, he loved his work, but also he wanted to provide handsomely for his family. We didn't get to Cleveland as often as we would have liked to, and Steve and Pat didn't get to Florida as often as I'm sure they would have liked to. But we dearly enjoyed our time together. There's a million things I could tell you, but I think that we basically covered Steve. He was a great guy. We'll miss him. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Joel. I know everyone here heard you. I'm hoping that people who are Zooming into the service heard you. I'm going to leave Pat's cell phone on so that you can hear us through the phone just in case you're still not on the Zoom. And we thank you for your words that were heartwarming. And what you didn't know, Joel, is that your words caused us to chuckle and smile a great deal, and we thank you for that. At this time, I would like to call on his daughter, Alessia.
I can stay seated here. Would you prefer that? Oh, no, I can get up.
If you want to come up here, our friends can see. Alessia, I'll put my mask back on. You can take your mask off.
Thank you.
You can get a little close to the mic.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Alessia, Pat's daughter, and Steve came into our life when I think I was about 10 or 11, and I was not an easy sell. I didn't make it easy for him at all. In my teenage years, my preteen years, my teenage years, and probably a lot of my adult years as well. But he truly became a father to me when he didn't have to, and always provided me with the best counsel, mediated between my mother and myself, which will be sorely missed. But I just want to express so much, and people who knew him, everything that everybody said is ringing true. He gave from the kindness of his heart and did consider other people's feelings and what was right always. And he took good care of me when he didn't have to, and I will be forever grateful. I would love to miss him. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing those beautiful words. We appreciate that. Now I would like to call on a dear friend of Steve's, colleague, Dr. Stephan Schwartz. He's no longer on.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you, Lisa, for the opportunity to share with you today. It's with profound honor, but also sadness that I speak today. Those of you present, those of you watching remotely, deserve to hear what an esteemed clinician, gifted educator, and wonderful friend and colleague we had in Dr. Stephan Schwartz. I was trying yesterday to remember when I first met Steve. It was difficult because it was like Steve has always been here. We probably met sometime in the late 1980s when Steve had just joined the staff of the Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disability. At the CCBDD, he built and then directed a program encompassing all clinical services: psychology, nursing, speech and language treatments, occupational and recreational therapies, physical therapy, and then served as Chief Clinical Officer for 20 years, responsible for these critical services for some 9,000 individuals served by the board. Steve introduced me to the IDD community in Cleveland, and we began a long and productive educational and clinical connection, which has persisted to the present. Steve was a founding member of the Ohio Coordinating Center of Excellence in the early 1990s. The role of the CCOE at the beginning was to educate the citizens of Ohio and the professional communities in Ohio's large cities and rural communities that individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities can and do suffer from psychiatric illness, which was still a fairly novel idea at the time, and that if identified and treated, they and their families could experience a more successful and fulfilling life. I was blessed in being able to accompany Steve and other colleagues from around the state to the four corners of Ohio on this mission, and got to watch and experience the blossoming of these educational seeds. Over several years of this initiative, we became known on the road as the Two Steves, a connection and designation that I will always treasure. People who heard us identified an easy methodology for deciding who was who. Turns out Steve Schwartz was both the smart one and the good-looking one. Locally, with Steve's leadership at the county board, in the mid-1990s, we launched a then unique program in the Department of Psychiatry at Metro Health Medical Center to train residents in psychiatry in the dual diagnosis of intellectual and developmental disability and psychiatric illness. That program he began still exists today, some 25 years later, and still with Steve's active involvement in teaching and supervision. Over the years, we have presented scholarly programs together, published together, and continued to educate together. As recently as Wednesday this week, before learning of Steve's passing, I was extolling a fellow at University Hospital about a seminar Steve would be leading next month. After leaving his position at the county board, Steve became the Associate Executive Director at Essentia, the disability program within the Jewish Family Service Association, where he continued his clinical and professional work. He never gave up his joy for education or his respect and love for the clients and families he served every day for the last 4 decades. We have all benefited from this dedication and this love. Steve was a true professional, and he could run with the best of academia, but he was also, at a personal level, concerned with each individual and family he treated, extending himself again and again to help those he served faithfully. He was also a good and trusted colleague and friend. I will miss his sense of humor and his infectious grin. I will miss him. We will all miss him.
I want to thank Dr. Steve for speaking about Dr. Steve. Thank you so much. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam dayan ha'emet. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, the righteous judge. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach v'hi shem Adonai mevarach. God has given, and now God has taken away. Still, we bless the name of God. Vayoshav hafar al haaretz k'shechaya v'haruach tashuv el ha'elohim asher natata. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns unto God who gave it. May the soul of Dr. Stephen, may his soul be bound up in the bond of life. Send comfort, God, to those who mourn, and grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. As you're able, I invite you to rise for the words of the memorial prayer, El Malei Rachamim. And following the memorial prayer, we will recite together the words of the Kaddish. El Malei Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim, Hamsei Menocha Nechona Tachat Kamfei Hashchina, B'malot Kedoshim U'Porim Kezohar Rakia Mas Yehi. Et Nishmat Yakireinu Shahalachana Unama B'Gan Eden Tehei Menochata. Ahina Baharachami Mastirehu B'Seiter K'Naftach Le'olavim V'Titzror V'Titzror Chayim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nechalata V'Tanuach V'Shalom Al Mishkavo V'Nomai Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Dr. Steve Schwartz, who has gone now to his eternal home. God of mercy, we beseech you to remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that Stephen performed in the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. God is his portion. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. As we prepare to recite the words of the Kaddish, I want to let everyone know who is gathered here today that before we leave this site, there is some earth that we can place on the casket. This symbol, this mitzvah, this commandment of ours tells us that our loved ones should not be buried in the hands of strangers. Just as when we come into this world, there are loving, caring hands to guide us, it's also true that when we exit this world, it should not be in the hands of strangers. So on the conclusion of the Mourner's Kaddish, I will invite you to do so. And Pat, if you wouldn't mind taking an extra handful on behalf of Joel and placing earth as well, we would appreciate that. We join now as we recite the words of the Kaddish, as we say together, V'yitkadal, v'yitkadash, Shmei Rabbah, V'alma, V'ivra, V'yirteh, V'yamli, V'malchuteh, V'chayechon, V'yomechon, V'chayeh, V'chol Beit Yisrael, V'adalau, V'zman Karif, V'yamli, Amen. V'hei Shmei Rabbah, Mevarach, V'olam, V'omei, Omaya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitba'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitalel, V'yitalel, Shmei V'kursha, B'richu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da amiran v'alma v'yivru. Amen. V'hei shalom rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. Oseh shalom imrama, uya aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. We pray that God, who makes peace in a high place, will send peace and comfort to you, the mourners, to Israel, and to all humankind. Amen. Friends, this concludes our service. Anyone wishing to join us to recite Kaddish, Steve's name will be read the next 4 Fridays in our service that will be live streamed. It can be accessed by going to our website at tti.org. The services on Friday nights are at 6 p.m. We will also include Steve's name in just a few weeks when we do our history service for young people. On behalf of Pat and the entire family, we thank you for your love and presence.
Pat, if you wish to take some earth.
Friends, for those of you who are concerned about touching the same handle, you can put your hand right into the earth. So if you don't want to go from handle, hand to hand to hand, just put your hand right in the earth, okay? We'll make sure we just do it socially distant so everyone is safe. Russia, I'm so glad you spoke about you.
If anyone else wishes to place some earth, they may do so. And then we're going to ask people to return to their cars due to the rain.
You need anything? No, if you need anything, just call me. It's this week, next week, all right? But seriously, if you want to watch the service and you got the website, yeah. Just call.
This ends our Zoom service. We thank you all for participating.
Wait, it's fine. No, good.
Sign and leave.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
I don't understand what the.
It was very touching, and they very